In exploring the complexities of female characters within biblical texts, it is essential to tread carefully. These stories, originating from diverse cultural and temporal backdrops, offer multi-layered interpretations.
I understood you, but I think you misjudged me. So, I've decided to give you a second chance.
While the term evil may be an oversimplification, the women discussed here certainly present morally complex narratives that have been variously interpreted across time and traditions. This video aims to delve into these enigmatic characters to offer a more nuanced understanding of their roles and actions. Number 1. Eve. Eve, the first woman according to the Judeo-Christian tradition, holds a unique and often misunderstood position in the biblical narrative. Found in the book of Genesis, she was created by God to be a companion for Adam, the first man. Her story begins in the Garden of Eden, a paradise where she and Adam lived in harmony with nature and God. However, she is most famously known for her role in the fall of man, an event that has been interpreted in various ways but often places heavy moral culpability on her shoulders. In the story, Eve is approached by a serpent, traditionally understood to be Satan in disguise, who tempts her to eat the fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. God had explicitly instructed Adam and Eve not to eat from this particular tree. The serpent persuades her by arguing that eating the fruit would make her like God, knowing good and evil.
For God knows that in the day you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil.
Intrigued and perhaps flattered, Eve takes a bite and then gives some to Adam, who also eats it. This act is a direct disobedience of God's command, and it has lasting repercussions for humanity, including expulsion from the Garden of Eden and the introduction of death and suffering into the world. In traditional interpretations, especially within Christian doctrine, Eve has often been cast as the instigator of sin, the one who led Adam astray. Her actions have been used to justify various forms of gender inequality, including the subjugation of women in religious and social contexts. In this reading, her curiosity and susceptibility to temptation become moral failings, emblematic of an inherent weakness in women. She becomes not just the first woman to sin, but the reason why all humans are inherently sinful and flawed, a doctrine known as original sin in Christian theology. The character of Eve raises questions about obedience, free will, and the nature of evil. Whether she is seen as a villain or a victim, a liberated woman or a cautionary example, Eve remains one of the most compelling and controversial figures in religious literature. Her story serves as a mirror reflecting the values, prejudices, and questions that each generation brings to its reading of the Bible. Thus, Eve becomes not merely a biblical character, but an enduring symbol, complex and multifaceted, continuing to provoke thought and debate. Number 2. Jezebel. Jezebel is another enigmatic and controversial female figure in the Bible, often cited as a symbol of treachery, rebellion, and sexual immorality. She appears primarily in the Old Testament books of 1 and 2 Kings as a Phoenician princess who marries Ahab, the king of Israel. Unlike Eve, whose reputation has been subject to revisionist interpretations, Jezebel is overwhelmingly portrayed negatively in both religious tradition and popular culture. Jezebel's infamy begins with her enthusiastic support for the worship of the Canaanite god Baal, which directly challenges the monotheistic faith in Yahweh that was crucial to Israelite identity. She not only persuades her husband to build a temple for Baal in the Israelite capital, but also seeks to suppress the worship of Yahweh by persecuting his prophets.
There will be no curse upon your house, not if a temple is built, where Baal can watch over and protect the house of Ahab.
Elijah, one of the most revered prophets in the Bible, becomes her primary nemesis, and their confrontations are fraught with tension and drama. At one point, she vows to kill Elijah after he orchestrates the defeat of the prophets of Baal in a public contest. Her failure to do so, however, does not diminish her influence. She continues to wield significant power both as queen and as a religious iconoclast. Though she is undoubtedly portrayed as a villain, the characterization of Jezebel is complex. She is strong-willed, politically astute, and religiously devout, albeit to a deity opposed to Israel's God. These traits, considered virtues in a man, are used against her to mark her as manipulative and wicked. The end of Jezebel's life is equally dramatic as her life had been. Forewarned by a prophecy from Elijah that she will die a gruesome death, she meets her fate unflinchingly. She puts on her makeup and royal garments and faces her assassins with a calm dignity that contrasts sharply with the undignified manner of her death. She is thrown out of a window, trampled by horses, and consumed by dogs. Like Eve, Jezebel is a character that invites more questions than answers. Her portrayal serves as a lens through which to explore the cultural, religious, and gender dynamics of her time. She is not just a person, but a symbol, a confluence of anxieties about feminine power, religious fidelity, and the integrity of national identity. Jezebel remains a subject of fascination and debate as people continue to grapple with the complexities she embodies. Number 3. Delilah. Delilah is another captivating female figure in the Bible, but her story is far shorter than those of Eve or Jezebel. Appearing in the book of Judges, she is primarily known for her relationship with Samson, the Israelite hero endowed with supernatural strength. Delilah is usually categorized as a femme fatale, a woman whose beauty and charm lead a man to his downfall. Her role is instrumental in the capture and blinding of Samson, yet her motivations are more opaque, raising questions about love, loyalty, and the complexities of human emotion. Samson falls in love with Delilah against the backdrop of ongoing tension between the Israelites and the Philistines. Delilah is approached by Philistine rulers who offer her a considerable sum of money if she can discover the secret of Samson's extraordinary strength. Intriguingly, the text doesn't tell us why Delilah agrees to this plot. She could be acting out of self-interest, seeking financial security, or she might have political or patriotic motives, aligning her actions with what she perceives as the best interests of her people. The text leaves her motivations unexplained, adding to her enigmatic character. The narrative does not provide details about Delilah's life after this event, adding another layer of mystery to her character. Did she ever regret her actions? Did she actually love Samson? Or was she merely using him? The text remains silent on these questions, allowing for diverse interpretations. What is clear, however, is that like Eve and Jezebel, Delilah is a complicated figure who defies simplistic moral categorizations. Her story invites us to explore themes such as the interplay between love and betrayal, strength and vulnerability, and the ethical ambiguities that often accompany human choices and relationships. Her actions have made her a symbol of treachery in Western literature and art, but they also raise questions about the complex factors that drive people to make morally questionable decisions. The enigmatic character of Delilah continues to fascinate viewers and scholars alike, making her an enduring subject for study and reflection. Number 4. Potiphar's wife. Potiphar's wife, whose name is never given in the biblical account, is a character who appears in the book of Genesis, specifically in the story of Joseph. She is often cited as an example of seduction and false accusation, themes that resonate deeply in both religious and secular literature. The tale is set in Egypt, where Joseph, one of the sons of Jacob, has been sold into slavery by his jealous brothers. He finds himself in the household of Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, and quickly rises through the ranks due to his competence and the favor of God. It's in this setting that Potiphar's wife becomes infatuated with him and attempts to seduce him. The Bible describes Potiphar's wife as persistent in her attempts to seduce Joseph. Her advances are not a one-time affair, but a recurring temptation that Joseph continually resists. His reasons for doing so are grounded in morality and loyalty. He does not wish to betray his master Potiphar, and above all, his God.
I cannot touch his you. How could I betray your husband's trust and sin against God?
However, when he refuses her advances, she feels scorned and retaliates by accusing him of attempted rape. Her evidence is Joseph's garment, which she had grabbed as he fled from her. The result of her accusation is disastrous for Joseph, who is imprisoned despite his innocence. Potiphar's wife is a complex character despite the brevity of her appearance in the biblical narrative. On one hand, she can be seen as a predatory figure, abusing her power to try and satisfy her desires at the expense of a vulnerable slave. On the other hand, Her actions can be interpreted as those of a woman confined by societal structures that offer her little agency outside the domestic sphere. This does not excuse her false accusations, but it adds layers to her character that a simplistic reading might overlook. The story also provides a look into the dangers of unchecked authority and the consequences of false allegations. Joseph's life takes a dramatic turn due to the accusations, underscoring the power that Potiphar's wife wields, at least in the domestic sphere. While she may be constrained by her role as a woman in ancient society, she is still capable of dramatically altering the course of someone's life with a single false statement. This duality, the powerlessness in one area and enormous power in another, makes her a compelling figure in the biblical narrative. While not as prominent or developed as other women in the Bible, the character of Potiphar's wife plays a crucial role in Joseph's life and serves as a point of contemplation about issues of desire, power dynamics, and the complexities of human behavior. Her story serves as a warning about the destructive potential of false allegations and provides a vehicle for discussing the ethics of power and consent. Thus, like other women described in these chapters, she is more than a mere cautionary tale. She is a window into the complexities of human morality and social dynamics. Number 5. Herodias. Herodias is a controversial figure found in the New Testament, specifically in the Gospels of Matthew and Mark. She was the wife of Herod Antipas, the Tetrarch of Galilee, and is infamous for her role in the execution of John the Baptist. Herodias was initially married to Herod Philip, the brother of Herod Antipas, and her marriage to Antipas was considered adulterous and unlawful by Jewish law. This very marriage is what drew the criticism of John the Baptist, who publicly denounced it, thereby earning Herodias's enmity. Herod Antipas himself is said to have been intrigued by John the Baptist and his teachings, even if he did not fully understand them. He hesitated to kill John, fearing public backlash and also perhaps harboring some level of belief in John's prophetic status. Herodias, however, saw John as a threat, not just to her marriage but possibly also to her social and political standing. It's within this context that she seizes an opportunity to eliminate John the Baptist once and for all. The opportunity presents itself during the birthday celebration of Herod Antipas. Herodias's daughter, often identified as Salome, performs a dance that so pleases Herod that he promises to grant her any request, up to half of his kingdom. Prompted by her mother, Salome asks for the head of John the Baptist on a platter. Faced with this gruesome request, but bound by his oath and the audience of guests, Herod reluctantly orders the execution, and John is beheaded in prison. Herodias is commonly depicted as a manipulative and vengeful woman willing to use her own daughter to achieve her aims. However, like many other women in the Bible who make morally dubious decisions, her actions can be examined within the constraints and pressures of her situation. Her marriage to Herod Antipas was a political alliance that assured her a place of prominence in the social hierarchy. John's denunciations threatened not only to shame her, but also to destabilize that political alliance. It's also worth noting that Herodias does not act alone. Herod Antipas himself bears responsibility as he willingly accedes to the request to execute John. Herodias becomes a lens through which we can explore the political and social dynamics of the time, including the limited avenues of power available to women. She manipulates the few levers of influence she has, although at a terrible moral cost. While her actions are undeniably harsh and self-serving, they do highlight the complex interplay of power, gender, and survival in a highly stratified society. As with other women on this video, Herodias is not easily categorized as purely evil or purely a product of her circumstances. She is a complex individual acting within a web of complicated social, religious, and political factors. Her story serves as a cautionary tale about the lengths to which people might go to protect their status and security, particularly when they feel cornered by unyielding ethical or prophetic critique. Number 6. Sapphira. Sapphira appears in the New Testament, specifically in the Acts of the Apostles, as a cautionary figure who, along with her husband Ananias, is struck down for lying to the apostles and, by extension, to the Holy Spirit. The early Christian community described in Acts was one in which members sold their property and possessions to share the proceeds among the community as a gesture of solidarity and faith. Ananias and Sapphira, wanting to appear generous but also wanting to keep some of the profit for themselves, sell a piece of property and present only a portion of the sale money to the apostles, claiming it to be the full amount. This act of deception might seem relatively benign compared to some of the other actions attributed to women on this video, but the consequence is swift and severe. When Ananias presents the money to Peter, the apostle immediately perceives the deception and confronts him. Ananias falls down dead upon hearing Peter's words. Sapphira, unaware of her husband's fate, comes in later and also lies about the amount of money received from the sale. She too is struck dead on the spot. Sapphira's story is a brief but impactful episode that serves as a sobering reminder of the gravity with which moral and ethical lapses were viewed in the context of the early Christian community. It reflects broader themes about the relationship between individual actions and the well-being of a larger community, raising questions about how integrity and dishonesty are evaluated within collective ethical frameworks. Her death serves as a warning that reverberates through the rest of the narrative in Acts, influencing how the early Christian community understood itself and its responsibilities both to God and to one another. Sapphira becomes a lasting example of the peril that can come from prioritizing personal gain over communal integrity, a theme that has implications far beyond the specific historical and religious context in which her story is set. Number 7. Michal. Michal, the daughter of King Saul and wife of David, is an intriguing figure whose character complexities make it difficult to neatly categorize her as either virtuous or wicked. She first appears in the biblical narrative as a young woman who falls in love with David, the heroic musician and warrior who gains favor in her father, King Saul's court. Her love is so strong that she aids David in escaping from her father's jealous rage, effectively saving his life by using household idols and a blanket to construct a decoy in his bed while he flees. Yet the trajectory of Michal's story changes dramatically as political and familial allegiances shift. The Bible states that Michal had no children until her death, which is often interpreted as divine punishment for her contempt for David. Yet this reading may be overly simplistic. Michal's story is fraught with loss, powerlessness, and the complexities of love and loyalty in the face of political exigencies. She exists in a world where her choices are largely made for her, and her agency is restricted by her roles as daughter and wife in a patriarchal society. Her scorn for David can be interpreted not just as disdain for his religious fervor, but also as an expression of deeper frustrations and disappointments, including her own political disempowerment and personal loss. Michal's story, then, serves as a narrative about the complexities of love, loyalty, and power, especially for women in a patriarchal society. It prompts reflection on how structures of power shape individual lives and relationships, often in ways that defy straightforward moral interpretation. She remains a compelling figure whose life invites ongoing discussion and debate. Number 8. Athaliah. Athaliah, the daughter of King Ahab and Queen Jezebel of Israel, holds the dubious distinction of being the only reigning queen of either Israel or Judah mentioned in the Bible. She married Jehoram, the king of Judah, forging a political alliance between the two kingdoms. But it's her actions after the deaths of her husband and her son Ahaziah that truly cement her reputation as one of the most ruthless women in the biblical narrative. Upon learning of her son's death, Athaliah orchestrates the killing of the entire royal family, effectively committing an act of intrafamilial genocide to secure her own hold on the throne. This massacre could have obliterated the Davidic line were it not for the actions of Jehosheba, Ahaziah's sister, who saves Joash, one of Ahaziah's sons, by hiding him away in the temple. Athaliah rules Judah for 6 years, and her reign is described as wicked, perpetuating the idolatrous practices that her parents had championed in Israel. She is not a placeholder queen. She is very much a ruler in her own right, exerting significant influence and maintaining her reign through what can only be described as a reign of terror. During her rule, the temple of God was desecrated, and sacred objects were used for Baal worship, underscoring a complete religious apostasy in line with her family's legacy. Her reign, albeit short-lived, offers an unvarnished look at the struggles and perils of governance, the corrupting influence of absolute power, and the complex legacy of a woman who defies easy categorization. While Athaliah's actions are inexcusable, Her story serves as a compelling exploration of the dark facets of human ambition, the complexities of biblical morality, and the intricate tapestry of political and familial relationships that shaped the history of Israel and Judah. Number 9. Judith. Judith is a complex figure who appears in the deuterocanonical book bearing her name. Unlike other women on this video, Judith is usually hailed as a heroine rather than as an evil character. However, her story is one that blurs ethical lines, making her a morally ambiguous figure worth discussing. In the narrative, the Israelite town of Bethulia is under siege by Assyrian forces led by Holofernes. The situation becomes so desperate that the town leaders decide they will surrender, if not relieved, within 5 days. Judith, a beautiful and pious widow, disapproves of this lack of faith and takes matters into her own hands. Adorning herself in her finest garments and accompanied by her maidservant, she goes to the Assyrian camp, pretending to be a defector with information about the Israelites. Holofernes is captivated by her beauty and intelligence, inviting her into his tent with the intention of seducing her. Judith waits until he is inebriated and then decapitates him with his own sword. She returns to Bethulia with Holofernes' head, inspiring the Israelites to launch a successful counterattack. The story ends with Judith being celebrated for her courage and cunning. While her actions save her people, the means by which she achieves this end are morally fraught. Judith deceives her way into the enemy camp, uses her sexuality to manipulate Holofernes, and then kills him while he is incapacitated. These are not the actions typically associated with biblical heroines like Ruth or Esther, who work within the bounds of their society's moral code. Judith occupies a unique place in biblical literature as a woman who defies easy categorization. She is both pious and ruthless, deceptive and courageous, making her one of the most complicated and challenging figures in religious texts. Her story serves as a meditation on the complex moral calculus involved in acts of resistance and survival, as well as the blurry line between heroism and villainy. Judith remains a controversial and thought-provoking figure, one who challenges us to think deeply about the nature of morality and the costs of liberation. Number 10. Lot's Daughters. The story of Lot's daughters is one of the more unsettling episodes in the Bible, found in the book of Genesis, specifically chapters 18 and 19. Lot, a relative of Abraham, lives in the sinful city of Sodom. When 2 angels come to the city to assess its wickedness, Lot offers them shelter. The men of the city surround Lot's house, demanding to sexually assault the guests. Lot offers his virgin daughters to the mob in place of the visitors, an action that has been deeply criticized for its ethical implications. The mob refuses, the angels intervene, and eventually the city is destroyed by divine wrath. Lot and his daughters escape, but Lot's wife turns into a pillar of salt when she disobeys the angels' instructions and looks back at the city. Lot and his daughters end up living in a cave in the mountains, isolated from any community. Believing they are the last humans left on Earth, the daughters conspire to make their father drunk and sleep with him, intending to conceive children and continue the human race. Both become pregnant, giving birth to Moab and Ben-Ami, the ancestors of the Moabites and Ammonites, traditionally viewed as enemies of Israel. This narrative raises several complex issues, including questions about consent, morality, and the role of women in ancient narratives. Lot's daughters are both victims and perpetrators within the story. Their initial offering by Lot to the mob exposes the limited agency and worth accorded to women in their societal context. Yet later, they execute a plot that involves sexual relations with their father, albeit for what they believe to be the noble cause of human survival.